All right, welcome to the seventh edition, the seventh year. It's hard to believe, I should say, the seventh season of EMU Today TV. My name is Mark S. Lee, and of course, I'm your host. And we appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in on each academic year. We provide you with updates in terms of what's going on around campus. And we just appreciate all of you for tuning in each and every single month. And I'm so pleased to welcome our very new, brand new Chief Diversity Officer, Mr. Dwight Hamilton. And he comes to Eastern after a diverse career in higher education, diversity, equity, and inclusion work in a legal profession. But I want to have him share with you his background. He's also a Michigan native. Dwight Hamilton, welcome to Eastern Michigan University, and thanks for joining me for this important conversation.
Thank you, Mark. I'm glad to be here. So, yes, this is homecoming for me. I grew up not too far from Ypsilanti in Oak Park, Michigan. I graduated from Oak Park High School, and I won't tell you the year, but quite a while ago. Michigan State undergraduate alum, Wayne State Law School alum, and spent the first half of what I consider my adult career practicing law. But went into higher education, particularly in the DE&I field, initially at Grand Valley on the other side of the state. But I was the first Chief Diversity Officer at Smith College. I was the Associate Vice President for Equity at Northwestern, and recently coming off of a position with Adtalem Global Education, where I did DE&I work for 5 different institutions that they held.
That's awesome. And tell us about your journey to Eastern Michigan. What led you to EMU for this position?
Sure. So, I always keep track of what's happening in my home state, and was very pleased to see that, they were looking for someone to serve in the Chief Diversity Officer position. I have to tell you, in the beginning, I was curious about it, but it really became super attractive to me once I had the opportunity to meet with several members of the institution. It's for me, again, it's opportunity to come home. It's the opportunity for me to actually serve the community where I grew up. I haven't had the opportunity to do that in my professional career. But there are also some really interesting things in my portfolio here that really drew me. And part of that is a program for first generation college students. The other is the Magic program, which is a program for students who have aged out of the foster care program and, starting their education here. And those were opportunities that were, again, very attractive, particularly Magic. I mean, the opportunity to contribute to something like that is, something that was certainly, brought me in and said, yeah, when can I start?
That's awesome. And as we talk about, you're relatively new within the last month into the university. I'm going to start with a very basic question. We're going to unpack this a little bit further, but what is your vision for DEI at EMU?
Yeah. Well, when I was giving my elevator pitch for the work that I do, what I say is, I'd look to identify barriers to full participation at institutions, whether that's as a student, faculty, or staff member. I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to fully participate within the institution, regardless of the identity. And we all hold several identities, but, those are the rich parts of us. We should be able to live those fully, but also be in an environment where that's not a barrier for your full participation. Doesn't guarantee an outcome, but it does, provide the opportunity to participate just as any other member of the community will.
As we talk about these opportunities, as you begin to get your feet wet and kind of been digging in, talking to key stakeholders across the university, what do you see the opportunities here? We know we had an interim, and by the way, I want to give a special acknowledgement to Dr. Doris Fields, who was the interim Chief Diversity Officer, did some great work as well. But from your perspective, as you step into that role on a full-time basis, on a permanent basis, what are the opportunity areas for you?
I think one of the great opportunities that actually sets Eastern apart is the rich diversity of its students. We do have a very diverse student body. About half of the first year class will fall into, among other categories, racial or ethnic minorities, which other institutions can't say that. So that gives us the potential to do a lot of great things, but it also provides a challenge because merely having people who reflect lots of difference doesn't by itself enhance the educational outcome and the educational environment. It's what you do to make sure that you're creating an environment where all members of the community feel that they belong. Again, have that access to full participation, because it doesn't make sense to say, "Hey, everyone is welcome here," but now that you're here, now that you've come to the institution, we don't want you to think differently, to express yourself differently. That's not what the work of inclusion is about.
And based on your experience, I'm not going to ask you to indict any other university at all. Not at all. I want to make sure
Sure.
we clarify that.
Yeah.
But you got a fresh set of eyes, you got a clean slate ahead of you. You saw what we have done thus far to date. How do we compare to other institutions? It doesn't have to be in the Mid-American Conference, but just generally speaking, how do we compare when it comes to DEI in terms of strategy development, implementation, to making students feel welcome relative to other institutions?
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is that in certain ways we become an outlier. And what I mean by that is having someone serving in this function at a senior capacity. I think many institutions started that process, 10, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
Eastern is, to be honest, in the current environment, it's kind of going against the trend. You don't have to dig too far in higher ed news to know that DE&I measures are being attacked.
Yeah.
So I have seen other institutions kind of retreat, even where there has been no directive for them to do so. So for me to have Eastern still say, no, this is a priority. We understand, what the national climate is like. But we know that there's a value in this work, and they're not shy about that. So, for me in doing this work, I think many of my colleagues are envious of me being in an environment with that philosophical take. Mhm.
Well, and Easter's in a very diverse community, as you referenced, not and also a diverse metropolitan area in
Mhm.
terms of Detroit and other parts of the state of Michigan as well, and went into Northwest Ohio, went to the western part of the state. But I want to go back to other institutions. There was a major case with the Supreme Court,
Yes.
certainly, but it ties directly into affirmative action, and
Mhm.
specifically at the University of North Carolina, and I believe at Harvard, where
Harvard.
the two institutions had a lot of conversation, a lot of ramifications, a lot of concern. Give you a chance to provide your perspective, Dwight, about that case, and is that going to impact what we're trying to do at Eastern Michigan as well as in the educational field at large? And what are your thoughts and your perspective based on that Supreme Court decision? By the
Sure.
way, it's not a political discussion, really an
So I,
educational
I get it.
perspective.
Um, you know, to be honest, Michigan has already been in that legal climate for quite a while.
Hmm.
As you may recall, Proposal 2, which I believe was passed in the latter part of the aughts, amended Michigan's constitution in a way that really significantly affected how race was considered in college admissions. So
Hmm.
we're kind of ahead of the curve. Michigan, Texas, California, and I believe Arizona are some jurisdictions that have really already been operating under what the Supreme Court now has made national. So I have been doing DE&I work again. I started at Grand Valley in 2010. So Proposal 2 was already in effect. Um, to be honest, we were still able to do some really great things. I'm not saying that it didn't have an adverse effect. It certainly has. You don't have to go too far down 94 and talk to my good friends in Ann Arbor to talk about how that has significantly affected their ability to attract a really diverse student body. So I'm not saying that it hasn't had an effect and it won't have an effect, but I am saying that you just have to understand how to continue to advocate, but do so in a way that is still in accordance with prevailing law.
In preparation for this conversation, I just heard a story recently over the last few days where Michigan State University just had the largest freshman class, but also not just the largest freshman class, but the most diverse
Mhm.
freshman class in its history. Kind of talk to us about that, and if you could tie that into EMU's strategy in terms of attracting diverse students. What is it going to take for us to continue to elevate? We're a diverse institution, I get it, but what is it going to take for us to continue to elevate that space within the university community at large as well?
Sure. So, for our friends at Michigan State, that's a result of a lot of hard work that they did. Um, you know, to be honest, the greatest effect that Proposal 2 and the Supreme Court, recent Supreme Court case, Students for Fair Admissions, have had is that you have a lot of students who are from underrepresented groups that count themselves out before they even apply.
Mm,
And they shouldn't do that. So what you need to do is you need to make your institution relevant. You need to be out there. You need to work with counselors. You need to go into schools and let them know that they are still an option. Unfortunately, the perception of the effect of the Supreme Court case and Proposal 2 have made some students kind of count themselves out. Now, as far as Eastern, we are a regional institution. We do draw a lot of students, again, from an area that happens to be very richly diverse, certainly on race, where institutions that like Lansing or East Lansing, for example, not quite as much. Lansing is a diverse community, but you get much further out there, not so much at all. So I think where we sit and the nature of the institution helps. But that being said, it's again, what is the environment that you have at the institution once the students are here? I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed in a couple of weeks that I've been here is that there are a lot of people here who are either faculty or administrative members who are Eastern alum, some 2 or 3 times over. It's an environment where people have made their homes here who because they came up as undergraduate students, still have a tremendous amount of affection, for the institution, and they want to bring other students along.
yeah.
That's been different from what I've seen at a lot of other institutions where, to be honest, people were discouraged from pursuing their graduate programs at the same institution where they had their undergraduate degrees. So here, I think it's been an advantage because you have a very deep bench of employees here who are very connected with the community, who are very connected with the student bodies. And I think part of our numbers reflect that.
We have about a minute remaining or so. I want to ask you briefly in terms of definition of diversity, because a lot of times we've kind of nailed it down based on race, but from
Yeah.
the way I view diversity, and by the way, I am an alum of Eastern Michigan University, to your point.
Mhm.
I believe diversity is a collection of people, thoughts, ideas,
Absolutely.
environments, and backgrounds.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, as we wrap up, I'll give you a chance to respond to that. A lot of people dumbing it down, so to speak, dumbing it down to based on ethnicity and
Mhm.
gender. How would you
Yeah.
appeal to that? About 30 seconds or so.
Absolutely. My view of diversity is global. It's the holistic. It's part of a person. Yes, race and ethnicity are salient identities, but in doing this work, we're also looking at individuals with disabilities. We're looking at veterans. We're looking at people from who are reconciling their rich cultural and religious faiths with their academic obligations. Certainly, sexual orientation and gender identity is all a rich part of who individuals are. And that's what I said earlier, where I said we all hold numbers of different identities, and my work in DE&I contemplates that and factors that in.
I couldn't say it better. Dwight Hamilton, welcome to Eastern Michigan University. We know you're going to make a difference. Thank you for your perspective, and thanks for joining us here as part of EMU Today TV. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And for all of you tuning in, we want you to hang around and check out this video. It's a safety video focused on new infrastructure that Eastern Michigan just developed. And as we start a new school year, we want to make sure that you're all properly aware of the new tools out there. Check it out.
A state-of-the-art camera system is a centerpiece of EMU's multi-layered campus safety program.
EMU has more than 1,000 security cameras throughout campus. These cameras cover every occupied building, as well as parking lots and other outdoor areas. Our cameras are centrally monitored in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by highly trained personnel at our on-campus DPS headquarters. We regularly update our camera system with the latest technology, including state-of-the-art software designed to identify handguns that will allow our officers to react and deploy quickly. EMU's camera system is considered a model for other universities.
Emergency blue lights are located throughout campus to complement the university's camera system.
The emergency light poles are easy to spot and include a security camera and an emergency button that, when activated, connects a person directly to DPS headquarters.
Safety is a big thing here, and these blue lights are something people really want to have around here. I want to feel safe when I'm walking to and from my car, to and from classes, or just anywhere on campus. As a student body, reached out to the administration to tell them we really wanted this. Having them respond the way they did was such an amazing act because it showed that they really cared about us and cared about our safety. I don't think there's a single place you can walk on campus and not see a blue light, and that makes me feel good, it makes me feel heard, and it makes the students feel heard, which is very important at a university.
All right, welcome back to EMU Today TV. I hope you enjoyed the safety video. Again, new infrastructure on campus is important that certainly all of us are aware of all the cameras out there and the new technologies to keep us safe. And what I'm going to do is to take a few moments and really just provide you with my perspective on a couple of things. Really, because I think it's important that we continue to have open dialogue. And so I'm going to just take a few moments and do that. We heard Dwight Hamilton talk about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is a space that I've been involved in over the years. And I think I want to continue just to ad lib, if you will, and provide additional commentary in that space. So we are very fortunate here at our institution to have a diverse administration, a diverse staff, diverse student population. We have wonderful international students coming from all over the globe, quite frankly. And that's been a result of a lot of hard work. And I think, let me speak as a former student way back in the day at EMU. As you all know, I was a student years ago, went to here undergrad, and I've been teaching, this is my 11th year at EMU. And for as long as I've known this institution, been engaged and been involved with EMU, it's always had a good track record in terms of having a diverse population. And that's important. As we fast forward to this year, this new academic year, it's important that we continue to build our legacy based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to go back to what we talked about a few moments ago. That diversity is just not based on ethnicity. It's not just based on gender. It's not. Diversity is a collection of people, thoughts, ideas, experiences, whatever those experiences might be. We all bring a uniqueness to this institution. We all bring value to the educational experience. There's nothing like it. And one of the greatest joys is when we all come together and the students come together and have wonderful conversations. I recently had a conversation at the beginning of the semester. I teach over at the College of Business, COB, and I teach predominantly marketing classes to juniors and seniors, and sometimes to graduate students, but predominantly juniors and seniors. And just the other day, we had a wonderful conversation as it relates to business and marketing and the importance of market segmentation and target marketing. And to watch those students in the classroom just take the idea and continue the conversation. That was awesome because they learn from each other. I learn from the students. I'm sure, of course, they learn from me, but we learn from each other. And that's the beauty of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is bringing people to the table, including them as part of the process. But equity is making sure everyone at the table have fairness, everyone. And one of the things about this institution that I'm very proud of is we've been able to do that at all levels of the university. I do many things. As many of you know, I have the opportunity to do public speaking. I do public speaking in this space. I also have been fortunate to I'm a media contributor across Metro Detroit and beyond. And people always ask me, What are the keys to success? How do we continue to leverage our backgrounds, our uniqueness? It's not rocket science. The first step is listen. It's incumbent upon all of us to listen to each other. It's incumbent upon all of us to empathize, show empathy. Don't jump to conclusions. It's important that we take that shroud, if you will, so to speak, off our faces and look at the big picture. It's important that we put ourselves in other people's shoes. It's important that we ask questions. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, teach me, whether you're a faculty member, a student, an administrator, whatever your role is inside of our great institution. It's okay to pause and say, I want to continue to learn. I'm a person of intellectual curiosity. What does that mean? It's exactly what the name implies, intellectual curiosity. I'm curious. I always ask questions. I encourage my students to ask questions. In my business, I go to meetings, I ask questions. Because what happens is when you don't ask questions, what happens? You assume that you know, but not everybody knows. And communication shuts off. The average attention span is less than 30 seconds of an adult. And some studies have shown it's actually 7 seconds. Our attention span is actually less than that of a goldfish, which happens to be 8 seconds. Let that sink in. That's why we have a rush to judgment. That's why we as opposed to listening, we feel like we have to get it out. We have to let people know our thoughts. Because we are living in such a hyperkinetic society. Speed. We want everything fast and we want it now. This is the time for all of us just to slow down, truly understand what other people are thinking. Let's make everyone, as we've all been doing, continue to make everyone feel welcome. There's nothing like the educational environment. There's nothing like the corporate environment where I worked for a long time, where all people feel a level of respect, that same level of respect, where all people feel like they can contribute. Whether or not you have kids, family, friends. Isn't it amazing what happens when we communicate with each other? We try to understand what the other person's coming from. If you have a disagreement with someone, what happens when you sit down and just say, hey, what happened? And after you talk about it, say, what do we disagree over? It's behind us. So as I begin to wrap up these few moments of your time, and thank you for indulging with me, because this is important that we have this conversation. As we enter this new academic year in the 7th season of EMU Today TV, it's a distinct honor for me to do this each and every single academic year. But as we wrap up, the only thing I'm going to ask you to do is this particular academic year, whether you're watching us from the university community, if you're an alum, or wherever you might be viewing this, just take time. Let's all slow down. Let's take time and understand everyone that we come in contact. Let's understand the needs, the wants. That's the basic marketing term. Basic wants and needs. Let's understand what it takes to fill those needs. But more importantly, let's understand the ability, the power of listening and communicating. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in for the first episode of the 7th edition, or I should say the 7th season of EMU Today TV. My name is Mark S. Lee. You go out, make it a great day, make it a great week, and we will check you out next time on EMU Today TV.